good morning, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant morning, and today I have a presentation for you which was put together by my very good friend Peter Weigang, and it is actually quite timely because it is about the whole issue of tariffs and how complicated that can be, and how actually deadly it can be for different countries' economies when they start getting into a trade war. And as they say in financial circles, currency wars lead to trade wars, and trade wars lead to hot wars. So now, hopefully it won't get to that point, but it certainly does erode any kind of relationship with the country and countries that are engaging in this kind of behavior. Now, tariffs are used to actually sort of balance the scales a little bit, and I've linked below in the description the history of tariffs between Canada and the US, which dates back actually to the Depression. And just like at thoroughbred racetracks, the racing secretary will handicap certain horses that seem to have an unfair advantage. And of course, in a perfect world, in his perfect world, all the horses would cross the finish line at exactly the same time. And this is basically the idea of tariffing. It prevents countries that can manufacture things an awful lot more cheaply than you can from entering your country and competing unfairly against your domestic manufacturers. Now, in this case, actually, I'm just going to do a little bit of an aside here, but I was, because it's presented as if this has just come right out of the blue and the US has, implemented these unfair tariffs around the world, especially on Canada. And then when I do some research, I find that actually Canada has been putting tariffs on American imports in quite a severe way for absolute decades. And here's a little example here. Now, I was absolutely stunned at this, and as it says, just to be clear, these are the tariffs Canada imposed on the US for years, even before Trump ran his first mandate. Dairy products, milk 270%, cheese 245%, butter 298%, other agricultural products, chickens, sausages, barley seed 57 to 57.8%, industrial goods, copper, aluminum, steel 25%, and consumer goods, cars 45%, TVs 45%, and this is not an exhaustive list, okay? And this is literally what the media is not telling you about this side of the story. So you have to decide for yourself whether the tariffs from the US are fair and justified, or whether Canada is unjustified in having all of these tariffs on US manufactured goods. And until both sides actually come to the table and agree to what's actually going on here, it's going to be very, very difficult to come to any negotiated agreement. But I think the bigger part of this is how corrosive it is on actual relationships between countries. And here's another little example. Now, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, actually threatened to put tariffs on hydro electricity being exported south of the border here to the northern states of US, and with really strong words, we won't back down, we're in this for the long haul, and so on and so forth. And next thing you know, Trump threatens retaliatory tariffs on steel and aluminum. Well, Doug Ford had to back down publicly. Now, he has lost face to the people of Ontario because he came out with all this bluff and bluster, and he got slapped good and hard. So, loss of face is not an easy thing to get over. And we're all looking at this going, well, yeah, okay, so you're not going to back down. You back down within 24 hours. And this is the most dangerous part, because the rhetoric can escalate really, really quickly, and it completely erodes any kind of trust and trusting relationship with your trading partners, and that could lead to border closures. There's all kinds of horrible consequences to this. So there is a place for tariffs, and there is a place to protect your own industries in your country, but they should be done in such a way that everyone is smiling at the end of the day and understands that this is a reciprocal act to simply balance the scales and to prevent unfair trade practices between countries. Okay, so let's go on with the video, and it's quite short, and I'll come back and do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go.
International trade is complex. Its purpose is to make money for traders. Here is a tea clipper, probably coming around the Cape of Good Hope on its way to the port of London. And it is bringing tea for my great-great-grandmother. Now that is worthy of some payment to the traders, and people have no objection to that. But when the trade is malicious, when it is designed to destroy nations and cause deaths of people, then it is unacceptable. The tools of the trade are taxes, sales, subsidies, embargoes, duties, blockades, and what we're all interested in, tariffs. All those tools of the trade must be used with great care, otherwise they backfire. So in this video then, we will look at how harsh tariffs sometimes fail. Here is the great border, the longest in the world, between two nations. The blue, of course, being the seas and lakes of Canada, and the green of the Midwest. Tariffs protect a country's products from competitors. Here is China, and in China you can make electric vehicles very cheaply. They are much more expensive to make in Canada, so we import them from China. Here is a small electric vehicle. Let us presume it costs $10,000 in China to make. We bring it across to Canada, and we cannot make that car for $10,000. So we add a tariff to it of 100%. So now that vehicle in Canada costs $20,000 and is comparable with what we can produce in our own country. Let us presume that a Canadian manufacturer exports widgets to the USA. It costs $50 to make one widget, and the manufacturer sets the selling price at $100, and that means that for every widget he sells, he makes $50 profit. Let's also assume that the tariff increases each month. Now, the number of widgets shipped each month is set at the number sold the previous month. And this is what the manufacturer does. He looks at the sales in the USA and he makes sure that next month he doesn't send more than the number sold the previous month. That makes good sense. Now, Trump takes all the money from the tariffs to rebuild the USA. Here we have the situation. Canada in blue, then passing through the Custom and Excise Department in the pink into the USA in green. And the tariff has been set at 20%. The widgets come in at $100 each. They go into the Customs and Excise, and the extra 20%, which happens to be $20, the yellow, is added to the top. So it actually enters into the USA marked at $120. The widget comes into the United States now marked at $120. A customer in the States buys that particular widget, and there's $20 which goes to the United States, and that is the tariff money. The $100 which is left over goes back to the manufacturer in Canada. Now this, of course, creates inflation, because the customer in the United States used to pay $100 for a widget and now has to pay $120. And that means that there are fewer people that buy the widget. And therefore, we respond by reducing the number of widgets. Let us look at this in more detail. Suppose the manufacturer ships 80 widgets to the States, and the tariff on each widget is $10. Now the US price is 100 plus the 10, which is 110. But only 70 widgets are sold. The other 10 left over are not sold, but they still have to be manufactured in Canada. So how much does the USA get in tariffs? Well, that's 70 number sold by the tariff, which is $10, and that makes $700. So the USA gets $700 using the tariff. What comes back to Canada? Well, it's $3,000, and it works out like this. There were 70 sold at $100 each, but there were 80 manufactured at $50 each, and if you look at the sum on the bottom of the slide, you see that that comes to 3,000. Now we can quickly enter all of the other numbers. Now we want to look at this a little differently. You see that when the tariff was $10, Trump gets $700. And when the tariff is $20, $10 more, then he gets $1,200, and that is $500 more. So moving the tariff from $10 to $20 increases the tariff that Trump gets by $500. Now let's increase the tariff by $10 more to $30 per widget. And now you see that in fact he gets $1,500. But that is only an increase of $300. So when we ship from 70 to 60, the increase is only $300, but from 80 to 70 was $500. And that shows the weak point in tariffs. Here I have expanded that previous table to cover shipped items from 100 to 5. And as you can see, when you plot it, this is what happens. As you increase the tariffs, the extra profit you make decreases, and that goes up to a maximum here, shown by the red star. Now, this red box shows that particular point, and you notice that the shipped items have decreased to just 60, and the manufacturer's profits are now 2,500, which is just half of what he hoped to get originally. So what does this do? Well, the manufacturer gets to the point where he simply says, I cannot continue, I have been laying off workers, and now it is time to quit. And this is then what happens. When he quits, the number of widgets shipped to the United States goes to 0, and there is no tariff profit for Mr. Trump. If you have a closer look at this curve, and here it is again with the maximum in red, that there in yellow is the sweet spot. That is where you really want to be, because when you increase the tariffs here in the yellow region, you get a lot more profit. Now, that particular spot is only found by experiment. Economics really isn't a science at all, it's a manipulation of statistics. So, I think that Mr. Trump is carrying out his experiments, and that is why he keeps changing his mind, and he's trying to find that sweet spot. Here are two of our major exports to the United States. Rolls of aluminum and steel and oil. And what does that allow the Americans to do? Well, they can build their refrigerators, their boats, their pop cans, airplanes, washing machines, and of course automobiles. Now, if it comes that we actually reduce these and they go away, then what happens? Well, in Canada, there'll be massive unemployment. We have seen what that does during COVID. There will be young people, particularly, who will turn to drugs. There will almost certainly be riots for food and other necessities of life. There will be poverty, beggars on the street, and we are closed. In America, the number of utilities that they normally make will be reduced and their price will go up. In Canada, the manufacturers have a choice. Either leave Canada and move to the States where they can prosper, or to stay with the sinking ship. And we all know what they will do. So here it is. The Canadian economy is shrunk. The American economy has grown. The reduced numbers of things that Americans want, such as refrigerators and automobiles, is small. But in comes the tariff money. And up comes the oil production. Drill, baby, drill. The factories in Canada move into the States. The factories from all over the world move into the States. And we don't know the figure, but already over $100 billion is coming from Taiwan in the chip industry. And here are our professionals. And what do? Our doctors and our engineers. They also move because there is no work now for them in Canada. And the net result is those reduced availability of things in the United States is no longer true. They increase, and there they are. And we make America great again. And now America is fully independent of what goes on in the rest of the world. Now Trump is playing the long game, but he's only got 4 years to do it. And that is why it is a fast game. Every sovereign nation must be able to feed its people, house its people, clothe its people, and have jobs for its people. That responsibility cannot be given to a foreign country. But that is what international trade does. International trade creates international interdependence when we really want national independence. This leads to a situation where there can be extortion by foreign countries on us or on any other nation. We are all trapped in this international trade cobweb. Here is Greenland trapped, and Mexico, and Panama, and even distant countries like New Zealand. But right now, it is us in Canada. And what is our fate with this international trade upon which we depend? Well, here is the international trade spider getting ready to devour us all.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that presentation as much as I did, and I hope it explains a little bit why tariffs, in one sense, can be a good thing, but as Peter said, when they become malicious, they can be very, very corrosive and very, very quickly erode any kind of friendly relationship, trusting relationship between trading partners. And I'm hoping that this move by the US is a prompt to bring this stuff to the table and to start negotiating fairly and openly, because it definitely is in Canada's best interest, because we will lose this war. At the end of the day, we will lose this war because America has such a powerful consumerist society, and we need markets for our products. And the products that we market, they can be bought in other places of the world. So we could find ourselves very, very isolated in this particular trade war, and so could Mexico. And this could lead to a recession or even possibly a depression. So yes, tread very, very carefully and show some transparency and negotiate with open-handed fairness. That's how I run my life, and that's how I believe everyone should run their lives. There should be no backdoor deals or around the corner, Bob's your uncle kind of stuff. No, we need to start negotiating on a fair and equal basis. And the media has to start reporting this without bias, because all I've seen so far in the media is absolute bias on this particular issue. And the research that I've done, it's seriously hard to wade through the biased reporting and find actual factual details on what is going on. Okie dokie, well, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant morning, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.